Welcome back to Enlighten Up. You're listening to episode 29, Feeling Lonely, Not Judging Judgy People, Reincarnation, and Mike the Death Expert. We are excited to start the new year off with this very fun episode where we have brought a listener into the conversation today with us. She is going to share some of her personal stories of awakening, which she is going through right now, sharing the struggles and the trials and tribulations of awakening and how she's dealing with them. And of course, we're going to talk about judgment because it's one of our favorite topics and how removing judgment has made such positive impacts on her life and Michael's. Of course, we later into the conversation talk about reincarnation, and Mike really takes us into his expertness of death. So really fun conversation today. And because we had so much fun on this episode, we actually want to let all of our listeners know that over the next 6 to 8 weeks, we are going to be asking you to send in your application to be on our podcast with us. We're going to do an episode where we have 3 to 5 of you join the conversation with us and ask us all questions that you have. So if you would like to be on this podcast with us, send in your information to info@enlightenup.us and tell us why you want to be on the show and what kind of questions you would be asking. We're going to choose the winner at the end of February. So we are looking forward to having you guys join us in our casual conversations on spirituality. So get your applications into us and we look forward to having you join our conversation. But for today, let's find out what Bianca had to share with Mike, Lisa, and myself. Welcome back to Enlighten Up, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is our first episode of 2018, and I am here with my beautiful co-hosts, Lisa Watson and Michael Ronayne. How are you two doing? How was your New Year's?
I'm doing great. So far, so good. One day into it, almost 2.
Honestly, I don't even really care about the New Year's. I don't care about those dates.
I know
you're glad to get the holiday crap over with.
I know you're so anti-holiday.
Super anti-holiday.
Well, we're here. Also, we're joined by a guest. Her name is Bianca, and she is a good friend of Lisa's, and she's kind of going through her own spiritual awakening recently. Bianca, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to be on this, but really nervous as well.
Don't be nervous. We're all friends. It's very casual. And there's always the power of editing.
Yeah. Perfect. Awesome. No, I'm super excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we were talking about different show ideas, and Lisa had brought up that you had been experiencing some disconnect after kind of making this spiritual connection and going through your awakening. And I've noticed that this is actually a really big issue for a lot of people as they start to kind of walk this path of awakening and start to connect more spiritually. Do you want to kind of fill the audience in on what's been going on with you?
Sure. So I started kind of going through this journey listening to your podcast, and I feel like I was kind of on this wavelength a little bit in the last year or two, and maybe even a little bit before that. And I read a lot of different books and things, and really into quotes, and just kind of always like lifting my spirits and things like that. But this podcast kind of really jump-started an entirely new journey for me, as I've been listening to the 3 of you and a lot of the guests that you've had on. So I'd say in September, mid-September is when I really started connecting and being more aware of it. That's, I think, the biggest difference is just I've been so aware of my emotions and so aware of other people's emotions that it's almost overwhelming, like how aware I feel of everything. But I'd say in the last...
Can I just interject there? I want to interject there and say that you came to Denver and you had mentioned just how connected you felt to the mountains, that you had gone, you went up to Breckenridge and Boulder. And I mean, I truly believe, just with my own experience in Telluride and light language, that there's something about the energy in the mountains that really moves you to a new place. And I just kind of wonder if that's sort of what, sparked, or it was sort of a catalyst to this opening that you had, besides the podcast.
Yeah, I think there were a bunch of different things that had happened. About 2 years ago now, my boyfriend and I had gone out to California. We had a wedding, but we decided to do a road trip, and we had started in Tahoe. And it was a really interesting experience being in Tahoe. I almost felt a little similar to how I did in Denver, but I wasn't quite aware of like what was going on at that point. But I had never been out there. My boyfriend was born out there, so we felt like super connected to being in Tahoe. So ever since then, we've talked about moving that way potentially, or like moving west, and we were considering Denver as well, and we wanted to get out and visit you. So we made a trip out of it in September, and yeah, it was really powerful. It was like how we kind of felt when we were in Tahoe. Just being in the mountains, I think being around your energy, Lisa, that was also a big thing for me. I don't know. It was such a positive weekend. I just didn't want to leave. And we went out there to see one of our favorite bands at Red Rocks too. And that was just very overwhelming emotionally. So I don't know, just so many things were happening, but yeah, I definitely felt like just that environment was really powerful.
So when you say that were just really aware of your emotions, do you think that you were really starting to tap into how empathic you were? Like that you are probably a very empathetic person, and you're starting to tune into that level of empathy where it may not just be your emotions that you're feeling, but other people around you?
Yeah, and I've always been like that, but I've never really been able to put it into words or kind of communicate it to people in terms of feeling like other people's emotions, my emotions. I don't know. And I've not always been good at controlling my emotions. It's very easy for me to be very happy, but also very sad very quickly. So I don't know. I experience a lot of emotions all the time, and I have since I can remember. That's just who I am. But yeah, I definitely, but being more aware of it, it's been interesting. It's been kind of like, oh, like I'm like, is this my energy or is it somebody else's energy? And I'm just so like, I'm more tapped into it. I don't know. And I'm able to communicate it a little bit better to myself. Not so much other people, but I don't know. It's just,
okay. So
does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that you just said, that you can't really communicate it to other people. And I don't think it's because you don't know how to explain it, because I think you're doing a pretty good job right now, but that you're afraid of how people are going to perceive what you're saying.
Yeah, that's part of it, definitely. And that's a lot of what you guys talk about too.
And how has that been for you, explaining to your friends what's going on with you?
There's only been like a few people that I've really tried to explain it to, but sometimes I'll jump into a little bit about just how I'm feeling and kind of what I've been like reading and listening to, and just like very like surface level kind of discussion. And then depending on how people like interact with me and react to it, depends on like how I continue the conversation. But then it I don't know, sometimes it's almost like, oh wow, that's like really cool. Like, and I know we talk about coincidences a lot and all of that stuff. But I think people tend to perceive it like that. And there's been a lot of things since September that have happened that just have blown my mind, in terms of just signs that I'm seeing and the kind of energy I'm feeling. But yeah, that's like not something that's easy to communicate. But I think people just kind of take it as it's more of a coincidence and like, oh, that's cool that happened to you, but whatever.
Like,
and like they move on. I'm sorry? Like
Brian and Michael. They say, yeah, it's just a coincidence. What are you talking about? You and your numbers.
I still think that's coincidence. Those numbers.
But you're starting to kind of understand that
No,
not
no,
all
no.
things
I'm
are
not
coincidence.
starting to anything when it comes to numbers and that kind of stuff.
No, I'm not. Okay, I know, but I'm saying like when it comes to coincidence, you're starting to realize that.
Some. I'll give some credit, and then they're also the word coincidence exists for a reason. There are some coincidences in life.
So Michael,
after that episode with the numbers, I was those numbers appear. Lisa, what are your numbers? Like 34
Threes
or
and
something?
fours, 333 and 444.
Yeah, after I listened to that episode, they appeared somehow, and I don't remember. And I was staying in a hotel that night and for work, and I got the room number 200 or something. I'm like, I have never had like room 200. It's always been like 201 or 211, but like, I don't know. I just thought it was really weird. And then I think the week after I got another room and it was like 100. I'm like, what is happening? Like, this is really weird. And it happened right after that episode.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Coincidence.
So coincidence maybe, but
well, zeros are known to amplify the energy of the number. So when you have more zeros, it's extra amplification.
Interesting.
Michael, curious, since this is kind of a new journey for you as well this year, or last year, I should say, what was like, were there any like struggles for you other than like wrapping your head around ideas that you were personally experiencing with like people in your lives, or like how you were able to assimilate things?
Not really. Well, I don't really. I'm fairly private with a lot of the stuff that I have because I have a lot of superficial relationships in my life. So when I do talk to someone that I know I'm going to see in the next year or 10 years or 20 years, it does get a little interesting. Like even, for example, like this past week, I was with my sister-in-law and brother, and my sister-in-law listened or tried to listen to one of our podcasts, but failed to finish it. And I don't think she was really impressed. And so it was like a little awkward with that, but like, I didn't care. I mean, I didn't care. I mean, I cared about her opinion in a way, but like, I'm like, at the same time, like, okay, well, if it's not for you, if it's not for you, I don't care. So I kind of have a little bit of a thicker skin when it comes to if people accept me or not, I couldn't care less. And I think that's, if Bianca, like what you're about to kind of like share with us is like that you're worried or challenged with other people's thoughts. I for some reason lost care on what people think, but I don't sit there and spout it out on the corner either on a soapbox. I mean, if people want to really know me genuinely, they can know these certain details of my life. If they're just passing through my life and the topic never is brought up, so be it. But yeah, I mean, there's times where it's awkward, but like for some reason, I love awkward situations. I love being awkward. I love talking about awkward stuff. And I can be very opinionated, but like I will also be the person that could change my mind in 10 minutes, not 10 years. So, I mean, that's the way I kind of been going through this past year.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because you're then a little bit of an anomaly, which we already knew. But there, like, so for instance, I recently joined this Facebook group, and it's like a spiritual awakening group, and there are a lot of people were posting about how alone they feel. Like one person wrote, "I didn't realize how sad and lonely this waking up process would be. I didn't realize how much my friends don't care about me." And I thought that was just really interesting because, you know, Lisa and I, we've been kind of walking this path for decades at this point now. And but when I think back to like when I first started, I did feel alone. I didn't know who I could talk to. I didn't know anyone who would even know about this kind of stuff. And it was like as soon as I found someone, it's like I latched onto them for dear life and just like became a sponge for everything that they could tell me.
To interject a bit, Nicole, I've always had you guys as my life jackets. So I never really had to go through what you guys are going through. So, I mean, I could talk to you about the craziest crap in the world, and you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Or, oh, you actually listen to me, heartfelt. I don't know what it's like for you guys, all three of you guys for that matter, on what you have to deal with when you feel like you're the only one in the world that kind of is going through it at the time.
Yeah, that's been kind of a nice blessing for you.
It is a nice blessing. I mean, I could really say the most random shit to you guys, and you'd be like, cool, whatever.
Because you know it's not weirder than what Lisa and I would tell you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's a good feeling.
It is a good feeling. That's what makes me smile every day.
Well,
so Bianca, can I just ask what, for our audience, what are you going through right now as far as, you said you were kind of on a high when you got back from Denver and you were feeling good, but what is it that you are feeling right now?
So I am experiencing that aloneness a little bit. Not so much feeling like people don't care about me or anything like that. It's just, I don't think I'm trying to stay positive about it and just kind of go through the motions and trust my energy and trust like how I feel, because I do feel happy. And I think I mentioned this to you the other day, because I was having a conversation with my best friend who has been my best friend for my entire life. And it kind of got like weird and a little dicey in terms of what we were talking about. And we were just referring to like another friend in another situation. But in terms of how I was approaching the situation, she couldn't really understand it. And she was like, well, you either want to do this or you want to do that. I'm like, but that's either living in the past or living in the future. I'm like, I'm not really having any expectations of anything. And I just felt like I was living like absolutely in the present. And I'm like, that's just how I feel. But she couldn't understand that concept. So those are the kind of situations that I've been struggling with because of the way that I'm approaching certain situations has changed. That people don't quite understand it. And then that's what causes confusion and like the kind of questioning. But I don't know if I'm making sense. Like, I just feel like I'm being questioned in terms of why I'm doing like certain things a certain way. And when I try to explain why, that's where it kind of becomes like a confronting kind of situation rather than a supportive situation.
Yeah.
That makes total sense to me. I mean, I felt that way when I first, back when I was 17 years old and started reading the Course in Miracles. I mean, it totally flips your view of everything, and it got, to where you just couldn't really share it with anyone. Or if I did, I would get comments like, you can't just go around with rose-colored glasses on all the time.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That was the comment I used to get. And it can be frustrating until like Michael said, he has us to talk to. So, well, and I've told you, you can always talk to us. But some things you just feel like I'm just not going to go there. I'm not going to explain my view on this because I know this person isn't going to be able to understand.
Right. And that's kind of what I feel like with almost everyone at this point. So it's like, it's weird. And even at work, I mean, I'm a super social person and like I will talk to anybody. I will be friends with anybody. And even at work, probably in the last few months, it's like I just don't really care to chat. Like I'm just because I just feel like a lot of negative energy. And I'm not necessarily like the biggest thing that I've probably taken away from a lot of the stuff that you talk about is just not judging situations and not judging other people or myself. And I try and like remind myself of that every single day. And that's just kind of made me like retract from certain environments or situations. Oh. Not necessarily in a bad way, but it's just kind of, it's like I just don't want to deal with it, but I'm okay with it. It's just not for me kind of thing. And yeah, it's just kind of, it's just a weird situation.
That's amazing that you've been able to like, if the non-judgment thing is the one thing that you were able to grasp, like that just makes me so happy inside that people are picking up on that. Cause it's a huge block for a lot of people. And so when you can start to kind of move away from that, it shifts so much for you. But I wanted to just kind of backwards into something that you talked about, where you were talking about how like you open up and it turns from support to confrontation. Mm-hmm. And the reason why this happens for people when they start trying to explain something that is beyond what other people can really grasp yet, because they're not there, it's because you're beginning to challenge all of their beliefs and you're shaking their own personal foundations that they've built everything upon. And for that to come tumbling down is unacceptable for them, because it's too scary and they just won't know what leg to stand on. In fact, they won't have any legs to stand on, and it's extremely scary for someone. They don't understand that's what's happening when that's going on, but that's basically what's happening. And so in order to preserve their own self, they have to come out now and put it back on you. So, right. And that's why it becomes confrontational.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So sure. When we can understand that that's what's going on, like for all of our listeners, if this is happening to you where you're starting to wake up to certain things, or you're wanting to challenge old beliefs and open up to new ones, when you start having these discussions with people you care about, or maybe they're coworkers or just, acquaintances, if someone's not at that consciousness level yet where they're able to open up and see beyond the limitations that they've been living in, and still they're rooted in their old constructs, then it's you talking about your thoughts and ideas no longer are about you, it's about them. And you've now turned from their yes person into their no person, and you're shaking everything that they've built their foundation upon. So that's very interesting to observe.
It definitely is, for sure. And I'm noticing it with a lot of people who are my best friends, but when you think you connect with them on so many levels, and then suddenly you feel this huge disconnect, it's very interesting to kind of see it play out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like, we all go through these different phases of growing up and all that. I used to be involved with friendships where there was a lot of drama, and drama was the big fuel. And to be honest, it was our entertainment. We used drama as like, how we'd have fun, and, whether it was like creating drama or feeding off of someone else's drama, or, anything like that. And when you start to kind of shift away from that and realize how destructive it is, and that's not really where you want to be, you want your energy being filtered into, or even receiving that, you start to not only see the destruction, but you feel it. It doesn't feel good anymore, and it doesn't feel right. And you may not know why it doesn't feel right yet, but you just know you don't want to be around it. And it's hard because you care for these people. They're people that you most likely love and spend a lot of time with, but it's you don't like the feeling that you're getting when you're having these interactions. And so it becomes like a push-pull of like, but I still love you, but I don't want to interact this way. And it's, how do you communicate that with someone without kind of offending them?
Right. Yeah.
It's definitely tricky. And it's all because of the energy. Your energy and your vibration is rising, and theirs isn't. So there's that disconnect. But you will be attracted. We talked about this the other night. Other people will start to come into your life, like this podcast and us, and, where you will be guided to and attracted to people of your own energy match. I kind of wonder, Michael, since you've been on this show, and obviously, things have shifted for you, how has it been for you with your friends, and have you made new friends at all, or are you experiencing the same thing that Bianca's experiencing?
Making new friends.
You don't make new friends so well, eh?
No, I don't know how to make new friends. I feel like I need to go back to school for that. As far as like losing friends, I think we all, no matter, even if you're not spiritual, even if you guys don't go into what we're talking about, I think we all, as humans, go in and out of certain relationships. Where when I was 25, my best friend group is completely different than when I was 35. And I could say I could easily say, and I know I could say this at 25, oh my gosh, I'm going to be best friends with you the rest of my life. And it didn't work out, or it didn't happen. And it's not because at the time, it wasn't because of, like, let's say, spiritual awakenings. It's just because life happens, and with distance and all that kind of stuff. That happens when if you move, you have a different job, you get married. I mean, I lost more friends from people getting married than anything. So it's like, I don't really worry about keeping friends when I have them, mainly because, like I said in the last podcast, I mean, sometimes I look at friends as like, this may be just a temporary thing. I hope it's not. I hope, when I'm 72 years old, I'm high-fiving you for some odd reason. But, that doesn't happen. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to enjoy being part of your life at that current state. And that's the way, I mean, like, I look at you, Lisa, and Nicole as, like, being really great friends of mine. And I really do genuinely hope you're in my life for the rest of my life. However, if I wake up 20 years from now and haven't talked to you both for like 5 or 6 years, it wouldn't surprise me, sadly. Like I said, I hope that doesn't happen, but that's just kind of, to me, how life works. So I don't know if it needs to be tied into like a spiritual awakening that keeps people detracted from you or attracted to you. I think it's just how life works.
Well, okay, so one of the things that happens, though, it wasn't just about you moving away, which is definitely a factor, but your value system changes as you grow up, right? So things that you valued as a teenager, you don't value the same way when you're, like, say, in your 30s or 40s. And as you, like, I'm assuming, because I'm not there yet, but like you, when you're 60, 70, you value other things that you didn't value when you're, say, like our age. And so I feel like it's a value system that changes, and the value system can change within like a spiritual sense, or it can be just on a personal level. It can be a work
Can I give
thing.
you like an analogy, Nicole, that kind of makes sense to me, at least?
Yeah,
maybe
of course. Please.
I see it a lot. I mean, and for the audience, I work with a lot of women, and I see a lot of women that go from party, wild animal girls, to all of a sudden they have a child, and they're completely different. Completely different. The most wholesome people, all of a sudden, born again, Christian, all that kind of stuff. And, just that part of their life changes them. That could happen when they're 23. That could happen when they're 33. But, like, I think it takes sometimes life-altering events to change people. And, a life-altering event changed myself, in my opinion, that made me more into a certain type of people I want to hang out with. And so that's the kind of way I feel. It's like, I just don't expect lifelong friendships to be lifelong friendships because you went to high school with them. You have to like look at people like what do you bring to their lives, what do they bring to yours, and that genuine connection.
Well, I think your whole attitude of non-attachment is refreshing, and I think that's it. Some people may say it's a form of protection, but really having non-attachment is one of the most loving things to do. And I think, life-altering events definitely are huge triggers for shifts within people. And it's actually something that I believe that before we incarnate into this lifetime, we've set up, and knowing that, this event is going to be something that can trigger us to shift or alter the way we choose to live our life and have that awakening in whatever way, whether it's spiritual or anything else, just some sort of awakening.
I think the non-attachment, it makes me think about living in the now, like what Bianca was saying, is you're just choosing to live in the now and embracing that more. And that brings non-attachment to things, whether it be friends or anything else. You're not trying to hold on to anything or recreate the past or set your future up. You're just enjoying the now. I think that's really important.
That's definitely what just kind of the conversation I was trying to have with my friend the other night about one of our other friends, because we kind of had a falling out over the summer and didn't talk for a few months. And then he reached out and like wanted to get together, and like I had this was like right after Denver when I was like, you know what, I just don't want to judge people and don't want to, like, if he has something to say, he has something to say, and I'm just gonna like take it for what it is, but not expect anything out of him either. And that's what my other friend couldn't really understand. And I was just like, well, I don't know. I don't know what he has to say. I have no attachment to it. Like, I don't need an explanation from him, and I don't need to hope that he's changed or made better decisions. It's more of just, if he has something to say, I'm willing to listen, kind of thing. And that's kind of how I was trying to explain, like, being present.
I will say something, Bianca. What you're saying with the non-judgment, if it's anything that I learned from this podcast, and for that matter, Nicole and Lisa, that has changed my life. Not
it
judging.
Really has.
The non-judgment thing has just opened up so much joy in my world, because I couldn't care less.
It's true. It's like,
it's not that I couldn't care less. I have empathy, obviously. However, it's like, if they judge me, whatever. And I find myself sometimes in my mind judging people, and I'm like, no, Michael. And like, I inevitably smack my wrist in my mind, like, don't do that. And like, that has helped me out at least so much. I'm not going to call it like a transition or an awakening or whatever. I just call it like a really good lesson to learn in life.
I would agree with you. That's totally changed a lot for me.
It's so freeing.
It is.
It is. Yeah.
It's one of the most freeing things when you stop
you know what, Lisa? I think when we go through the first 12 years of school, all we feel as children is being judged. All we feel as children is being judged by our parents, being judged by a teacher, being judged by the whole curriculum. And I think we as humans, unfortunately with our current system, just come out of in our 20s going, holy crap, everybody's judging us.
And we're supposed to judge everyone else. It's what you're taught to do.
Well,
I've mentioned this before with my kids in homeschooling. It's one of the things that I really noticed about them when they got to be in their young teens was how non-judgmental they were. And just, I think, keeping them away from that judgment, they were allowed to just be who they were, and they were allowed to let other people just be who they were. And it was one of the most satisfying moments of my life when I realized that homeschooling had produced this in my children. It made me so happy. I'm like, this was not something that I set out to do, but wow, I mean, it's great.
Yeah. Okay. So Michael, that's such a great point to bring up about the whole schooling system and how, like, the whole time we're in school, we're constantly being judged or judging. And it teaches us to judge, but it also teaches us to seek outside of ourselves for approval. And I think that's what you're talking about when you say you don't care, is that you're no longer seeking outside of yourself for that approval. All you care about is how you feel about yourself. And if you're good and you can look at yourself in the mirror and feel good about you, that's what matters the most, because you're the one who's living in your body and having to live with your actions and words that you speak and all of that. So I think that's like part of it as well, is that when you move away from the whole non-judgment, well, you do stop judging yourself, but it also feeds into that whole, like, well, I don't need to constantly seek outside of myself for this approval anymore, because it's clearly not helping me.
Correct. I still work on that. I mean, I think it's just something that it's just a reminder of every day, just that I have everything I need right here. I don't need anybody to confirm anything for me. It's just what I do and how I feel, and going inside myself is the only thing there is and the only thing I need. Everything else is just a bonus, if it's good. I mean, other people, and your interactions with them obviously, are great, and but not needing it is a lot different.
Yeah.
And not seeking it.
No. And I'm Michael, I'm fully not attached to needing to hang out with you when I'm 70. However, I am putting the intention out there that I plan on doing tequila shots with you when we're 70. So
I know, according to the last podcast, we will slowly drift away.
What are you talking about? No, we're not.
Yeah, you're vibing up, and I'm.
Oh, because of what Michelle, the power of 10.
They didn't say that.
Yeah, we talked about this in the last podcast.
I know, but that's not what they said.
My biggest worry is I'm going to lose Lisa and Nicole because you guys are like in some sort of high cloud vibe, and I'm just sitting here on the ground like 3D world.
That's a valid point, though. I mean, that truly is a valid point, and I'm sure Bianca can probably relate to this as well. You start to feel like, your closest relationships, as you start having this awakening, it's a little bit scary. You're like, okay, if you have a boyfriend or best friends or just whomever, you start getting like, am I going to be able to relate with these people anymore? Like how, far away from each other are we going to get?
Let's just pick on you if you are open to share.
Sure.
Has it changed your relationship with your boyfriend?
So I think, yes and no. It's changed both of us, I guess. But I mean, my boyfriend's name is Mitchell. So I feel like it's easier to just call him by his name. But we met pretty randomly. And shortly after we met, he was telling me a lot about the law of attraction and things like that. And I was like, never heard these terms before. But they were all kind of things that I had practiced or kind of how I lived my life in a sense. So I picked up on them very quickly. And that's when I kind of started reading a lot about it. And we were super connected in that sense. And we've had an awesome relationship. But I'd say, in the last couple of months, I was starting to not feel connected to him or a lot of other people. And we had a conversation. It was like, what's going on here? We've been together for over 4 years. So it's one of those things where I'm like, is it just, this is how it is now? I don't know, the honeymoon phase is over kind of thing. Or why do I feel so disconnected? So I told him that. And, then one day we had a conversation. I think I had listened to one of your podcasts or was reading a book or something. And I'm like, I think that he might just not be on the same frequency as me. And he is super busy with work and has stuff his own stuff going on. And I was like, are you how do you feel? I just feel like our vibrations are off. And I think that definitely changed things. And it took it was kind of a little off for a little while, and we were just trying to figure it out. But that was definitely something that affected us for sure. But kind of having that intention as well, you want to be with this person. This makes sense to me, but I just need to figure out how to connect again. And I think that's something that we've been trying to figure out.
How does the whole understanding of, you saying maybe we're just not on the same frequency, how does that feel for you? And that's an idea that could be explaining what's going on between you.
I mean, it's kind of that's what makes me feel like I'm aware of my feelings and aware of my emotions, and it doesn't necessarily make me feel positive or negative. It's just kind of okay, I'm realizing where I'm at, and now we have to figure out how we can both be there together, or how that's going to shift our momentum moving forward kind of thing.
So it just kind of helps you make sense of it a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And it took even going through all of this, it took a while to kind of figure that part out too. And to realize that, wait a minute, we've always been so connected. So what's the difference here? And then I was like, well, maybe I am feeling very different, going through this, and I'm in a totally different mindset. And I don't think he was quite there yet, and he understands it for sure. But I think just being able to communicate that and have that conversation was helpful in itself.
Okay, I don't think sorry to interrupt.
No, go for it.
I don't think okay, so Bianca's boyfriend is my nephew. That's how we're friends. And Mitch came to visit me, gosh, I guess it's been maybe 5 or 6 years ago now. And one of my first visits from one of my nieces or nephews, which was great. And that was when I was still married to my ex-husband. And, you know, and I've been on this spiritual journey since I was 17 years old, but, you know, my ex-husband wasn't really into a lot. It was hard to practice what I really wanted to practice. And Mitch is actually like one of the reasons, or he was a catalyst to re-sparking this awakening in me, because he was really into the law of attraction and just about creating your own life. And just,
I'm sorry, guys. What is the law of attraction?
Like attracts like.
Yeah. So if you put out positive thoughts and energy, then you're going to receive positive stuff back. It's about vibration, basically, and about energy.
I just had to catch up with this term that you guys are using.
What's the famous book? The
Secret.
The Secret.
Yeah, The Secret.
The book that all the girls read.
Yeah,
I haven't even read that book.
Mitch mailed it to me. Like after he left, he sent it to me.
I only thought only girls read that. I am blown away today.
He sent it to me as like a thank you for, you know, me hosting him while he was here. And and so I read that, and it really did, you know, spark in me again to start, you know, I'm like, oh, I know this stuff. I'm like, Lisa, you know this stuff. Like, I need to get back into this. And so, you know, he really did help me. And, you know, because he has that foundation in him already, I can see, you know, why him and Bianca were attracted to each other in the beginning. But, you know, that foundation, I think, is there. He already has it. So whether you guys get a little bit away from each other for a little bit, I can see that, you know, he's open to that type of talk, you know, vibration and energy, and he understands the law of attraction. It's not like you're with someone who's like my ex-husband, who's completely like, yeah, we're not going there.
Yeah, he's so supportive of it. And I mean, he's definitely sparked a lot of that in me as well. But I think the transition that happened, like Mitch was kind of always a little bit ahead of me in terms of understanding a lot of these concepts, but doesn't necessarily like, he's more into like the science of it. And like the universe and that kind of energy, but not, I'm like more on like I go by how I feel kind of thing.
Yeah, he's in his head.
I don't really want to read about the science necessarily.
Yeah.
But so I think what happened was like, he was kind of always a little bit ahead of me in terms of understanding a lot of this. And then I've had this like major shift in the last few months that like and I've been really into it. So I've been reading a lot about it too, not just kind of like living it, but really like getting into it. And that's kind of, I don't know, pushed me even further ahead. But I think what happened was like, I kind of am now leading him in a sense.
Yeah,
in terms of some of this. So I think that shift kind of was like, wait, what's happening here? Like, this isn't how it's always been.
Yeah,
so I think that just takes time, like figuring out.
You've tipped the scales of balance. And so I think like part of the struggle there is, which happens a lot in relationships. So like, this isn't just for you and Mitch, but, okay, sorry, this is a total side note. Don't mean to be distracted, but it's funny that his name's Mitch and we've got Michael on the show and he goes by Mitch on his Facebook. So
Oh, really?
I do. I mean, every time you say Mitch, I'm like, what?
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So, but you know, so what's happening is there's been a kind of a tip in the scales of, when I say this, I mean in a very respectful way, but of power.
Right.
Okay, so especially if he's in his mind and he's been the leader, it's a very hard position for someone who's in a leader to then be led. So I think that might be where some of the issues lie, and it's an adjustment period. So,
right.
So that I think is part of the struggle as well. But you know, I just want to touch, Michael, you talked about the book, The Secret, and how like it's a book that all girls read. And I just want to say that, because let's talk about this like attracts like. This year, I have been introduced to so many woke men who are like blowing my mind at how consciously awake they are and how many things I'm learning from them. And it's just amazing because, for the majority of my life, it's always been the women who are kind of leading the pack. And it's so refreshing and so relieving to see so many men really kind of stepping into this awakening and expanded consciousness and using that and voicing it out to the world, because there are a lot of men out there who are having great ideas and concepts and breaking down old constructs and really challenging people's minds. So I just want to put that out there for all of our male listeners that, we know we got some woke ones out there.
Michelle Paisley Reed spoke about that, or her husband did, about how, it's always been called women's intuition, and men, haven't really been allowed. It hasn't been socially acceptable for them to talk about that kind of, to use Michelle's word, like woo-woo sort of stuff,
Yeah,
so
but
I think it's becoming more acceptable. And
not only that, but the men are starting to talk about it in a less airy-fairy way. Because men tend to be more left brain and they use their mind in that more analytical way. Typically, not always, but and women more go from the feeling sense, like you just said, like the intuition. The description, the use of words is different when men describe things versus women. And it's very interesting to hear the male perspective being spoken and the words, the verbiage that they're using. And it's very refreshing and very, like, there is science behind it, but then there's a lot of, they're using very powerful words, I find, that, and very succinct, like to the point, like it's not a long descriptive thing. Like they're really getting their ideas into very well-constructed sentences that drive home the power of whatever it is that they're trying to convey very quickly. And that's been also an interesting observation I've been making. And I love it. I got to say, I think it's sexy.
Yeah, Mitchell's so good at communicating a lot of this. I'm like, can you just write down what you just said? He's always been really good at communicating it to me. Even when we first started dating, he everything he would say just made like perfect sense. So it's interesting that you say that, because he definitely communicates a lot of these concepts very clearly, and I'm just like stumbling over my words half the time.
Yeah, I was the same
smart,
way.
and he's very smart, and he's I adore him. I mean, he's just such a sweet, gentle soul too, that he makes you feel just warm being around him. And like he's really listening to you, and he's compassionate, and he cares. And yeah, you've got yourself a great guy.
He's pretty great. I'm going to keep him around.
Yay, Mitchell. All right.
Yeah.
I just had a thought and now it's left my mind. Shoot.
Well, when you were talking about, like, kind of when we were mentioning, like, the whole judgment thing, I think that's one of the other struggles that I've had is interacting with, like, being aware of how much other people judge people and themselves. And that's been a disconnect for me as well. Like, just having conversations where people, like, it's just full of judgment and I don't even know another word for it, but you just want to, like, stop them or, like...
I think you might be going through the same thing that I go through, Bianca, which is, like, when I'm looking around let's say I'm a group of quasi-friends, and I'm looking around going, holy crap, 8 out of 10 of these, I just don't even want to hang around ever because of the way they're talking, the way they're judging, the way they're just going crazy on everything. And then you go, like, even on, and unfortunately we live in a social media world where you go online and, like, it's pure, like, 99.9% judgment on social media.
Yeah.
And it's like, it does sicken the soul to see it. And like,
sure.
I have my views. However, when I see people that believe on my views attack other people that are on the quote unquote opposite views, it pisses me off. It pisses me off because I'm like, why the hell are you guys judging them so bad? And they're like supposedly on my team. And it's like, it just makes me feel like my views are not right because they are so judgmental. But, I think that's just how, unfortunately, the world we live in right now. I think this is, if you want to look at our individual ways of awakening, if you guys want to use that term, I'm not really a big fan of that term, but like if you guys want to use the term awakening and an individual process, I think the world, in a way, is awakening to a lot. And during this awakening, if the people are going to really take the extreme on the judgment button. They're going to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. I mean, have we had a more hated president right now ever in the United States besides the previous president?
I was going to say,
we just keep amping it up, is my opinion. We just keep amping up the judgment. We keep amping up the hate. And it's like, I feel like there's going to be a climax eventually to all this stuff.
I heard this analogy, and for some reason, I think it may have been from you, Michael, but it's like being around, you start to feel like a non-smoker around smokers.
Yeah.
When you're
Yes.
around a bunch of people and then they're just talking drama or judgment, and you're standing there like, yeah, I just got to get away from the smoke. Like, this just doesn't feel right.
But you used to smoke. That's the problem.
Exactly.
So there's a little thing in your body that says, oh, I can join them and I probably could be okay and really get off on that cigarette. But no, you're like, no, walk away, get away from it.
Yeah, but I think that I read an article or something. I know I'm remembering this from somewhere. Someone described it as being like a non-smoker, but that you can just either change the conversation or walk away, instead of, being party to it or whatever. But sometimes I find when I'm around people who are just speaking about judgment of others, I just find a very, sleek sort of way of just changing the subject into something totally different, like, about the weather, some sporting event or something, to where you just get off of that topic.
Yeah, it sends the message without having to say it.
Yeah, and then you're not engaging in the negativity, but you're also, it's important not to judge them for being judgmental. You were once there. We were all once there. So it's not right of us to judge them just because we've decided to quit smoking and we realize it's a healthier way of life and that's what we want to do now. We're not going to condemn all the people who are still smoking. They'll get there when they get there, and when they decide that they want to be healthier and, live a more joyful, happy life, then they'll go there. So, it's a great opportunity. It's like a little test for you not to judge. Like, okay, they're judging everyone, but I'm not going to judge them for judging.
Which is
right?
I understand you completely, Lisa. It may not make sense when it comes to like spitting it out in words, but like I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's a real thing, and I'm so happy to
judge
have
people who are judging, which is the hardest thing to do.
I'm so happy to have Bianca on our show and just be able to talk about these things because, these are the day-to-day realities of, becoming a more enlightened person or awake, whatever you want to call it.
Bianca, let me ask you, what is your biggest fear or worry in the future?
I'm very fearful of death.
Really interesting.
Nicole and Lisa are like set with me.
Yeah,
I'm on your side. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not too happy about this.
I'm like, I'm trying, part of this process too is like made me reevaluate that a little bit, but I'm very fearful of like people like that I love passing away more so than me, but like also me. Like I'm very like, I don't know. I'm also someone that doesn't watch the news, but partially because I like have nightmares about everything that's going on. But I'm a very like worried person sometimes. That's not necessarily, but like, yeah, death is definitely like a big fear of mine. But
what about death is scary to you?
I think I just like, I don't know. I think it's more of just like, I'm an emotional person. So like the thought of like losing someone is like emotional to me. It's like very heavy. I don't know, but I don't really know how to explain it. But I've always like been like that. I've always been afraid to like lose people.
Bianca, are you a YOLO girl?
I can be. I wouldn't say like I'm running down the streets like.
No. Like YOLO mean like
but...
you only got one life on this planet. Where our co-hosts, Lisa and Nicole,
have thousands.
Yes.
Maybe not thousands.
I guess I've actually not reconsidered that terminology since this process started for me, but
see, I feel like
because I have always been like that, yeah, like live your life to the fullest. But then sometimes I forget that in a day-to-day.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced on the...
all of them, all the lives to live, they should all be lived to the fullest.
I guess I'm not quite there yet in terms of
Lisa, you're the
living more than
solo.
once.
If you live life to the fullest, here's a line of Coke. Let me live life to the fullest.
How is that living life to the fullest?
How is that? I have no interest in Coke.
Live life to the fullest. You're really telling people do everything that makes you feel wonderful and great.
Why is cocaine on that list?
Yeah, that wouldn't be on my list.
As an analogy, don't get me wrong. I'm just like saying,
but
you say live life to the fullest, people will say, oh, I should do this line of Coke or that line of boys.
Well, if that's what they really want to do and they really want to experience cocaine, then yeah, I say do it. I mean, if that's what you really want to do and you feel like you'd be missing out, then you should try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? I mean...
Well, there is something.
That's the radar.
I'm over here as my fear of death, but...
yeah, no, like...
A line of cocaine.
Do that line of Coke. No problem. Fun.
I'm curious, Michael. Why is it then when you have this idea in your head where it's like, just do what you want, that you go to like a dark place? Like, it's not like... you know, like do the most joyful thing in your heart that like really just lifts you up.
Like quit your job and backpack across, South America.
Yeah.
No line of cocaine.
Oh my goodness. See, okay, that's the problem. You guys think the most joyful thing in my heart? First of all, I'm not using the word joyful and heart in the same sentence on most of the things I do every day.
No, but when you're talking about living your life to the fullest, that's what I would think, like, is that you'd want to live from like your joy, like what makes you so joyful in your heart. But
not living out of fear.
Yeah, but like maybe that's what someone wants to do, and like Lisa says, do whatever it is that you need to do, because who knows what way your path is supposed to go. Like, we just don't know.
I mean, if that's truly something like you feel like, I've always wanted to do cocaine, like I just want to know what it feels like. And I mean, I don't think a lot of people feel that way. But if that were a thing, then, I mean, experience it. We're here to experience things. So I'm not saying become a drug addict, but unless that's really something you want to experience, I'm sure it would happen for you. But that doesn't sound like a choice someone's going to make. I really want to be a homeless person and just, get addicted to meth. And I think I'll try that.
Well, there's a...
Well, wait.
Actually,
it is a choice, Lisa. It's just not a conscious choice in the way that people assume you make that choice.
Agreed. Yes,
yeah.
I realize that. Yes, it might be a choice, but you don't know you're consciously making it.
Yeah.
For sure. Everything we do is a choice.
So fear is like, death is your biggest fear, Bianca.
Yeah, but, well, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really think about... I've always been like one of those very cautious people. Like, I never played a single sport that like I could get hurt in. Like things like that, I'm just like very cautious, but I'm also like the first person that will like, I don't know, like I'll just move to another city on a whim. Like I've done it, like with no money kind of like, yeah, I'll just like pick up and do things. So I don't know. I think I don't really think about, I just avoid things that like maybe scare me a little bit too much. And I just move on and say it's not for me and don't really think about what I'm afraid of necessarily. It's like not something I think about often.
It's good.
kind of, except for death, but not really. I try not to think about it.
I used to be afraid, not of myself dying, but I used to have this fear of my children dying. And I've realized that only recently, like maybe in the past 6 months, that I am no longer afraid of that.
Well, that's good.
I'm not sure.
Tell me some of your tips on that one.
I'm not sure if I could put into words how that came about, but I think it's just letting go, kind of what we talked about earlier, about letting go of an attachment of an outcome for certain things and just living in the now and not really thinking about the future too much or what is going to make me happy. If this happens, then I'll be happy, sort of thing, and I've learned to let go of that and just really be present to where I just don't feel worried or scared about really anything anymore.
Yeah, I think that whole concept has definitely helped me. Like I am strangely more aware of how I feel about death. Like it actually is something. It's interesting that you're bringing this up because it is something that I have thought about. I'm like, I don't feel as stressed out or.
Bianca, I'm sorry. I'm curious. Really, how old are you? Or you don't have to really.
I'm 28.
You can give me a range. You're 28. Okay.
28.
Oh yeah, that's a good time to start thinking about that stuff. Yeah, it's kind of when I did.
I just want to say that it's not a coincidence that it got brought up tonight.
No, I was just going to say.
Oh, what? 28 means what, guys?
No, not the actual number.
Okay.
Yeah. About her talking about how she feels about death, and she had been thinking about it. It's not a coincidence.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think as humans, don't we all think about it? I think about it 15 times an hour.
What? Usually it's supposed to be sex. For you, it's death.
Yes, I might think about sex 15 times an hour.
Unfortunately, I lost that a long time ago and repulsive to the female community. But no, I think about death a lot.
Interesting.
Well, that explains your visitors.
But I don't think about death as a good or a bad thing. I just think death is okay, you got to understand the industry that I'm from. The industry that I'm from, it's all about trying to stay as young as possible.
Yeah, that's true. You're in the anti-aging business.
And so I'm always trying to research and teach and learn new ways of staying young. And that's why the majority of my friends really have no idea how old I am, because I don't really care about age. I don't look at, just like New Year's, I don't look at, there's a calendar event that how many times have we ran around this fireball in the sky makes me feel like I'm a different person. No, I don't. I just look at this is our life, and I don't feel I feel like I'm younger than people that are younger than 10 years, quote unquote, than me, and I might be equal to people that are older than 10 years than me. And so it's I just enjoy trying to figure out cool ways of avoiding aging, which ultimately aging is the disease that leads to death.
Okay, so you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point because the actual act of birthdays and saying you're, say, 36 years old is actually ages us. And so I learned this, and that's why when I turned 40 last year, I said it's my 40th trip around the sun because I want my life to be a vacation. So it completely shifts the mind into and out of this aging process where you're getting older to I'm on a continuous vacation and I'm just going around.
You're on a cruise ship that keeps going around the world.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are things that actually age us, and they're programmed in us specifically to assist in the aging process. So it's just something for our listeners to be aware of, that, when you're celebrating your birthday, celebrate it, enjoy it, but don't say I'm X years old. Say it's my X trip around the sun, because that's true. And it turns everything into a vacation.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's all in how we think about things and how we've been programmed.
It definitely is. Okay, so Michael, why are you a YOLO person?
I just don't really have any kind of, I need a little bit of data. I need a little bit of I'm not going to say proof because that's a hard thing to press when it comes to these kind of subjects, but just something that makes my internal gut say, this is absolutely correct. And I just don't have that yet. I know you guys do, meaning you and Lisa, Nicole and Lisa, but I am not there yet. You guys talk about, and I think this will come up in future podcasts, about, living many lives before, and maybe it's narcissistic of me to think that I like to think that I'm on my own.
They broke the mold when they made Michael Rooney.
I don't have another entity named Mitch or Michael or whatever out there that I don't have. I didn't live in the 1700s or the 700s or whatever. I just like to think that I'm just living this experience at the time that it was given to me as like a beautiful one piece of art. Okay. Not like a multiple replication of art.
Question then. Do you believe, then you don't believe that you have a higher self?
I believe I have a soul, which I might think is what you guys are referring to as a higher self.
So you believe you have a soul. So what happens to your soul when you die?
Well, that is the mystery of the current world that I live in. But I'm not sitting there saying, I'm going to go straight from death to some random woman's womb. I just think that I feel like.
Well, that's not how it happens. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that
some random woman's womb. I just had to repeat that. I'm sorry.
I mean, literally, that's what you guys are saying, though. Reincarnation. What is that?
Yeah, but it's not like you die and then you're instantly in someone else's womb.
I choose the womb.
Okay. Again, you guys are trying to say, okay. But my point is this. I don't necessarily believe in going into another different life as a different person or whatever. I just don't have any gut feeling why I should believe that. I know you guys do, and I respect the hell out of that. And we're still friends.
But let's work through this for a second.
We're still friends.
Friends.
For now.
What? Oh, so
Oh, believe me, Lisa. With all the crap you guys have said, if we're not friends by now, we're gonna be. There's nothing you could say that we would divide us.
So, okay, what would be the point of living 50, 60, 70, 80 years? Some people a day. Like some babies are not even like a day old and they pass away. So what would be the purpose if you're never to come back?
I'm not there with the idea that we have to have a purpose.
Well, everything in this world is not random. It's all orchestrated. So there has to be a purpose to everything.
I appreciate your belief in that, but like I'm just not there yet.
Well, science has proven that. There's nothing random. So there is a divine orchestration. That's what I like to call it, but like science has other words for it. So what would be the reason for someone to live one day and then never come back again?
Been a question on my mind for years.
Food?
And it still is a question in my mind. And unfortunately, even after our 28 podcasts, it's still a very big question on my mind.
Well, food for thought.
Bianca, bring you in this conversation. What do you think?
I struggle with this a little myself, but I'm not totally. I don't know. Some of the stuff that's happened on this podcast has really made me believe otherwise in some ways, but I'm not really there yet either. With like,
boom.
I think one of the biggest struggles I had that you talked about on one of your episodes was that we could be like, our soul could be in two different people on this earth.
Yeah.
Like, that is like very, very difficult
that's
for me to
That's
get.
very difficult. That's a very difficult one. Trust me.
Yeah. But I don't know.
You know what? I think the most important thing is that it doesn't matter whether you believe in reincarnation or not. It's that your mind is open to all possibilities. And that's what allows for the new ideas to come in, the new thoughts, the change in beliefs, if that's what happens. That's how the mind evolves and grows, is that you stay open, and now you're open to receiving all these new insights. And that's how you have your shifts throughout life. And it doesn't necessarily mean that one day you're going to believe in reincarnation. It could be that you decide you don't, but you've opened your mind to allow all this new stuff to come in, which usually comes in through experience. And I think that's what's the most important thing.
I would agree with that.
So,
the thing is, Nicole, who the frick cares if I lived 80 times before or lived nothing before? I have this experience. For some reason, according to you guys, we grow up with amnesia if we did believe in what you guys believe in. And if I grew up with amnesia, then why am I struggling to try to figure out my life if I'm not supposed to really know my previous lives? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
It's like if reincarnation happens, it'll be a pleasant surprise. However, I'm not really putting a lot of dollars in it, and nor do I need to, because
no, you're right. You're right.
Life. I have this life.
No, you're absolutely right.
I have a twin soul out there, according to our last podcast or whatever. But I'm not worried about it. I don't really care about it.
No, I completely agree with you in the sense that it allows you to really stay in this present moment and just enjoy the life that you're in right now, whether it's one of many or the one and only. And so I completely agree with you on that. It's just when you know that that's not what the case is.
When but how do you know, really, Nicole? How do you really know, besides of what other people have told you? Have you experienced anything beyond the realm of just nature that says, oh, yeah, I've lived on this earth many times before?
Yes, I've had past life recollections.
A lot of dreams, too, myself.
No, not dreams.
Okay.
Well, Maureen St. James is going to, she reads Akashic Records, and I'm excited.
Yeah, okay, I'm very curious about that podcast to come up, but we'll see.
I've had people recall past lives to me, people who've never known one another. Okay, two separate people who've recalled the same past life to me without me telling either of them about it. And then I've had my own past life recollections through my meditation.
Okay, but unfortunately, it's not going to add up enough information or data for me to say, yo, you were right. You were absolutely right.
Okay. I mean,
just like what we talked about when it comes to angels and demons a couple weeks ago, it's you kind of have to live through it to actually believe it.
I totally understand that. And that's why, for me, it became so obvious when I have multiple people telling me the exact same past life in very specific details. I'm like, how does that happen? To me, that's data that starts to take one thing as being an anomaly to all of a sudden being a normal thing that is existing. But like you said, you've got to experience it. So I honor that.
That's what I meant. But at the same time, I'm open to it. I'm not denying you, no, you're absolutely wrong. I'm 50-50. Could be a YOLO, could be my 80th time around the sun. I don't know.
I can't wait to be at the gates when you finally remember and your amnesia's lifted.
You think I'm even in the club line for the pearly gates? No, I'll be in the alley next to the pearly gates.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
About thinking that way.
Well, this has been awesome, Bianca. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great chatting with you and very helpful as well.
Bianca, I think you're going to be on a future podcast because we're going to track your progression.
Yes, yeah. I'm hoping that there is progression. No, I know there will be, but yeah, I'll keep Lisa posted.
She'll be back in Denver soon. She can't stay away.
Oh, can I just make just a slight comment?
Yes.
Denver, the mountains, all that stuff, it gets people into a spiritual realm, in my opinion. Again, it's my opinion, so it's very, whatever. My opinion is like when we are exposed to such a openness that it makes us feel very small, it awakens a potential spirituality within ourselves, which is the reason why there's huge churches with huge windows and whatever you call it, like I don't want to say arenas, like a coliseum, but like when you are exposed to something so big that it makes you feel small, you jump into the realm of spirituality. This is why so many people live on the coast, because the ocean reminds them of how small they really are. Same thing with the mountains, because I grew up in the mountains all my life in the Pacific Northwest. It was like when you are out in nature, you are reminded on how small you are as a human or a spiritual entity or whatever you guys want to say.
Wow,
so,
you sound so enlightened.
I'm not enlightened. I'm just saying I'm not enlightened.
I'm totally drinking your Kool-Aid right now.
Like, it just what it does is it
Kool-Aid is good.
It doesn't necessarily mean like go to Denver or Breckenridge or whatever the heck we went to that makes you wake up. It's just like you are reminded of how small you are, which reminds you of like what is your importance in this world. And then I think that is like the key thing when you're in nature, when you're in the mountains, when you're in the desert. I love the desert myself, oceans, all that kind of stuff.
Well, the reason is because when you're in nature, you're brought back to the way things were intended to be, which allows you to come back to how you were intended to be.
Fair enough.
And Bianca lives in New York City.
You live in New York City? Oh,
I do live in New York City, and that's been a big struggle for me too.
You must be struggling with so much judgment left and right.
I'm struggling really hard, actually. It's been rough. Bianca, I go to
New York City after 3 days. I feel like I need to get the hell out of that place. I will go crazy and become a crack addict around the corner.
Yeah. I mean, I've been here for over 6 years now, and it was really good in the beginning. But yeah, I'm getting pretty much ready to bounce.
Yeah, I love to visit New York City, but I can only spend so much time there.
It's like Toronto. Nicole, it's like Toronto point 2.
It is. Yeah.
I think like even that's another part of the struggle that I've had is managing like where I live, where there's so much negative energy.
Bianca, just for statistical reasons, people that live in New York City live 10 years less than the average American citizen.
Coming from our death expert.
Just throwing it out there. If you really care about death, just throwing it out there.
Yeah. No, this is not my permanent home. I'll tell you that much. But...
Now she's gonna have nightmares. You're so mean.
Good job, Michael.
No.
I want to enlighten her with ideas and facts.
Oh my god.
No, but I can believe that one because even just like walking down the street, I'm pretty much dying from secondhand smoke because people just smoke in the middle of the sidewalk and continue walking. So,
well, maybe
I take that statistic.
Maybe we can have an anti-aging Michael Guru show where he can tell us all the facts that we can live by.
I got a shit ton of stuff to tell you guys.
Oh my goodness. But yeah. Definitely an interesting place here.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on. We really appreciate it. It was a great conversation, and we'll definitely have you on again in the future.
Thank you so much. You guys are great. And thanks for sharing all your knowledge.
Thanks for being on. We appreciate it.
Yeah. So to all our listeners.
Happy New Year, even though I don't feel like anyone wants to celebrate it, really.
No.
That's Michael.
Yeah.
Happy New Day.
Happy New Day. Yeah.
Happy Tuesday. What is it? Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you. And for all our listeners, if you love the show, please subscribe to us and share us with your friends and family and coworkers. And also, if you have any topic ideas or any questions you'd like answered on the show, you can send them into our email, info@enlightenup.us. And stay tuned because next week we have a show coming up with Teresa Llaneros, and we're going to be talking about UFOs. So, Michael, prepare yourself because I know you're going to love that one.
Oh, okay.
All right, everyone. Have a great night and week, and we will be back with you next time. Bye.
Bye.